The U.S. Navy has been plagued, I would say, with is a bad spell of bad leadership, specifically on the enlisted side, as there's been a lot of controversy, especially with the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy rank. And now when I say that, that's because if you guys forget, you had Master Chief Stevens, which was good, and then you had Giordano, I believe is how you say his last name, which he had been relieved, I would say, or was going to be, but I feel like he stepped down because of all the drama that happened inside of his office as he berated junior sailor or service members. And then on top of that, you then had Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy Russell Smith, which was under investigation. But again, like I said, nothing ever came of it, and we just knew that he was being investigated and nobody knew why, and pretty much he retired after that. And very shortly after that, we have our new Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, which was James Tanea, which he was kind of announced a little early, I would say, because he took over so many months after that. It was like a divert your attention away, divert it. But now he's trying to tackle some of the biggest problems, and I want to cover some of the sentiments that he's making notes of that I think are important. It says, Navy new Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy aims to be a problem solver amid S words and a life ender in water contamination. So obviously the first one is not a secret. That's been something that's plagued all military branches. And then the water contamination, which happened on the aircraft carrier, which sailors were posting all over social media. So it says here, the Navy's new top enlisted sailor said he wants to be a problem solver for the fleet in his first remarks to the press since taking office in September of last year. So I'll give him credit. It's been, about 4 or 5 months. He's finally getting his bearings. Says Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy James Tanea came out with a clear message to reporters Tuesday at the Navy's annual Surface Naval Association conference, a gathering just minutes from the Pentagon in Virginia. He says sailors can depend on that out of me, removing the barriers that prevent them from having a safe and secure place to live and to work and execute their oath of enlistment, he said. And he says, I do it because I'm passionate and I care about our people. Now, I'm hoping, this sounds sincere. This guy is actually taking the time to say, I care about you. And I think that's been a sentiment that was very much lost by the former Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, Russell Smith, because he didn't really talk about the first one, the ending of life, until like the very tail end where he talked about a little bit of his personal experience. And it was only after the Chief of Navy personnel came out about his, which I felt like he didn't even have to, and that wasn't really in his realm, but I did appreciate it, and he made a statement. So let's get back to the topic here. The Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy took the top post in the wake of several incidents such as ending of your life among the crew of the aircraft carrier USS George Washington to potable water contamination on Navy ships, which have exposed serious issues facing some of the service's most junior sailors. Pay and personnel actions as well as medical care are also top concerns for sailors, according to the MCPON, which I agree. There's so many things we could talk about this. Water contamination was acute. Looks like it's gone away. No one's ever talked about it, even though the ship had lied about it and the public affairs team had lied about it and didn't actually have any true clearance that the water is good. Serious issues facing junior service members, which medical care, I would say mental health care specifically is kind of maybe what he's alluding to here, and the concerns for sailors according to personal actions, which if you go on Reddit anywhere, people are always commenting that they have never been paid for 3-4 months, and it finally takes somebody to actually do an act of Congress. I will give a small story here. We had a guy that was an E3 not getting paid for being in Japan while his spouse was still back in the States, and he eventually had done everything. Went through the entire training command, everything. Commanding officer knew about it. Everybody knew about this, and he eventually just left an ice comment saying, WTF, and an admiral heard about it and was like, how dare he say WTF to me? And pretty much, yeah, he didn't get in trouble because that's his concern he was able to voice, but the cursing that was included in that ice comment didn't please the admiral too much. But it's like, if these people did their jobs, you wouldn't have to worry about cursing on an admiral in a freaking ice comment. But let's go on. Honea, who has been in the Navy 35 years, go on, man, go ahead, and started his career as a boatswain's mate, comes across in person as a cheerleader for the service members he represents. In quotations, the men and women that are serving in our Navy today are just as capable and willing to defend our way of life and fight for our nation than any generation that came before them. Honea said, and he says, I have just as much confidence in them that I've had in anyone else that I've ever served with. I'm about to bring a tear in my heart, Master Chief. About to bring a tear. Come on, man. Prepare me for that, man. Prepare me. I'm kidding. Honea says that he heard some of these concerns from sailors once he took over the job in September and spent the next 4 months touring the fleet. And he says, I think we're pretty aware of some of the problems that are bothering our sailors, he said. And I would say, again, you could just go to Reddit and see every problem that every sailor's ever had for the most part. As, you know, we're not a lot different. You know, maybe small circumstantial things change that we are suffering in different ways, but most of the time, if it's pay related or housing related or X related or Z related, whatever it is, it's not too far off that it's a small group or at least a decent group of people that have experienced that same issue. He says the top two is timeliness of our pay and personal actions, and then access to quality medical care. And he said before adding that quotations, both of those we should be able to execute to an express standard. And says, you can hold me accountable for it. And Master Chief, I think myself and other people will. And he says he's quick to point out got a lot more good than bad from his conversations with sailors on the Navy and on a good path. But nonetheless, it hurts me that we're not as good as we think we ought to be. And, you know, I fear, you know, Mick Pond here, I'm going to say this to you directly, that there are sailors that are going to tell you what they want you to hear. And because when we do these all hands briefings, there's their CMC, there's maybe their CEO there's maybe their chief, their LPO, their bosses that are there. And it's like, you better not say some dumb stuff. If you didn't bring it up to us, we didn't. And then it's like, so then what's the point? You know what I mean? It's like, at least it got out there. So it creates this weird contention point that doesn't need to be there. And I understand it makes you look incompetent as a leader, but maybe you need to work on hitting the deck plates and walking around and being approachable. That's my opinion on it, but let's move forward. I'm just saying, Mick Pond, you might not be getting all the bad, or maybe people are trying to put a cherry on top. He says, I don't expect to win everything, but I also don't expect that I'm going to find myself confounded or bitter or frustrated. He said, I've got a lot of fleet perspective. I've got a lot of time out in the fleet, and I can bring that to bear. I think that our policymakers, our decision makers, and our lawmakers will understand that, respect that, and take that in. It says, you got to protect them and keep them fueled up. He said, referring to the senior enlisted leaders, you can't just drain them all out. Oh, I think that's going to happen with the new retirement system that's put into place. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people staying in. I'm going to be honest with you. I think there's going to be some big, massive changes Congress is going to have to make, and I think it's going to be reactionary. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be on the Mick Pond for this. You got to understand, the Mick Pond is, in my opinion, not the bottom line. You know, he's not signing things saying this is what will happen, but he definitely has an advocacy and an influence on what is going to happen. I appreciate him talking about this because he is part of the chain of command. He is. I will give him that. But it's sad when you have this person, the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, cleaning up the dirty laundry of what we're seeing from a aircraft carrier. And I would say, Mick Pond, my question is, why didn't those statements and those sentiments from the Master Chief, the CMC, Command Master Chief of that aircraft carrier, come out and talk like this? Why didn't we see that? We barely saw it with the commanding officer, which he had some very choice words. And I'm like, why are we not hearing from them? It doesn't feel like it. It feels like they were like, whoop, public affairs officer, do your job. We're going to... back off. We can just say the water's good. We're still testing. We're doing, you know what I mean? It felt so lackluster. And I feel bad that you as a top person has to take this level or this initiative to try and, you're taking the punches. You're being the punching bag. And I understand that's part of leadership, but I'm like, this is a little late, and I'm not blaming you, but I'm like, we needed to hear this from other people, not you, and I think people understand that, but I do appreciate that you are trying. Now, I want to say there are some needs. If you ever want to open up, my channel is open. I hope I can have an interview with you, and I hope I can gather some true hard-hitting questions for you, because I don't want to hold back. I don't want to put a cherry on top. I'm going to get some real feedback. Let's make the Navy better, because I'm tired of saying all the negative stuff. I want to say something positive. Give me a reason to say something positive. But as always, if you guys like this or you want me to actually have an interview with the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you share this wherever you can, because I would love to have you guys heard. And I hope I could be some beacon of advocacy without having every bit of chain of command around to maybe try and filter this. And I would love to do that. But if you guys have any topics you'd like me to cover, hit me up over on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.